guys doing? Well, I'm not out west, as you can probably tell. I'm back home in Michigan. It's my second full day of deer hunting, and I wanted to go over a few things that I think need to be addressed as far as the western hunting aspect of it. Just got back from Idaho a couple days ago. We had a wildly successful season out there. A lot of guys got bulls, a lot of them got some nice bucks. We had some new hunters that thankfully they tagged out on their first animals ever in both Utah and Idaho. But I've noticed kind of a growing trend among some of the hunters that we have out there, things that they do or don't do that they need to address. So I made a list of things to prepare, at least from a guide perspective, clients that need to better prepare for a hunt. One of the things, and this is more for archery hunting, but research the moon phase at the time that you're going to be out there. I do not see nearly as much elk and mule deer activity during a full moon in the daytime as compared with a decreasing moon. The animals will move a lot more at night, particularly if the weather's clear. Towards the end of the season, with the days being shorter, that's not such an issue. A couple of the elk hunts that I did, the cow hunts there here in November, we didn't have hardly any issues with it, but there's also a lot less daylight, so they have to move more so during the day to get their feet in and to feel comfortable while they're doing that. The biggest thing, and this is number 2 on my list, this is in no particular order of importance, but for me, probably the number 1 thing that I see clients not doing correctly is shooting, practicing shooting. I think I had 3, maybe 4 clients this year that came out that either had not shot their weapons off the range, or maybe just didn't even shoot them at all. They just grabbed it, shot it once or twice, zeros on, okay, they came out and they went deer hunting. I had one guy, super nice fella, but not a big game hunter. He wanted to use his grandpa's rifle, which is fine. Decent rifle, 30-06, Remington pump action. Came out on a mule deer hunt. We had a really nice buck at about 350 yards, got him all zeroed in on it, good hold. He fired, he ended up hitting a doe next to it in the head. Unfortunately, we were not able to put her down and put her out of her misery, and the buck got away unscathed. Next day, blew a deer's leg off at I would say close range, but 260 or so yards from a prone position. A lot of it was just the failure to practice with the rifle, to know the trigger pull, and he did not know the correct shot placement on the animal. I told him where to hold. I'm not sure where things got messed up, but they did, and we ended up not getting that buck. There's some debate on whether he'll survive. There's a lot of coyotes in the area. From just a physical standpoint, I believe he will. I don't think it was a kill shot. Actually, I know it wasn't a kill shot. I followed his blood trail for over half a mile before he jumped the fence onto another property and disappeared. So I had him switch rifles. I had him take my rifle out. Had him practice at longer ranges. It's got a different scope, better trigger pull. I also had to do a lot of dry fire, both at the range and when we actually got into another animal. And we had to dry fire a few times before he really got steady. He hyperventilated a lot, and he's not the only one. I've had other hunters that shoot at a little bit longer distance, past 300 yards. They get so excited that they do not know how to calm down. And you really have to sit there and remind them, be like, just breathe, just take a deep breath, let it out, do it again. Get your heart rate down, get that trigger squeeze where you want it. Don't pull the trigger until you are absolutely ready. And a lot of guys will rush these shots and you end up with wounded animals, maimed animals. And that's not what we as hunters, and especially as guides, want, because now that animal's going to run off. It ruins the opportunity for someone later in the year or maybe next year. That guy did end up taking a nice animal at 329 yards with my rifle. One shot, perfectly clean, animal went 50 yards and dropped. No issues with it, except for the hike up the doggone hill, dragging the thing out. But he got a nice buck. Some of these other guys I ran into, they'll shoot at a target range. They'll go there, that's the only place they shoot. And they'll either shoot off the bench with a lead sled or just off their pack. Off the pack's kind of okay, but then they'll carry shooting sticks with them. I think I had two hunters this year that did that. I've had others in the past. They never shoot off their sticks. They only practice at the range from a sitting position. They never practice from the prone. They don't shoot off their sticks. Both of those guys missed deer at least 5 times. I think the one was 6 at ranges that should have and could have been definite kills. There was one instance with the one guy that I had, and he told me, he's like, I can hit just about anything at 500 yards, and he's missing animals at 350, 400, not taking shots at 250, 185 on bedded animals, where we have multiple bucks, a couple of them are laying down, a couple of them are standing, and they're all shooters. And he had not fired from, I don't want to say a tactical position, but a field position. He didn't know how to shoot from the prone. He didn't know how to get into that kind of a stance quickly and effectively and take those clean shots that were presented to him, and was instead taking these longer range shots that he probably really shouldn't even had any business pulling the trigger on, and missing wildly on that. In feet, not inches. So practice with the equipment that you're going to take out in the field with you. Don't overload your pack. You need a certain amount of fluff in there if you're going to use that as your shooting platform. You're going to use it as a rest, but don't weigh it down. Number 3, check your weapon zero. If you're coming from, say, California or Florida, you're at sea level most spots. Even from Michigan, going out to Idaho, I check my zero when I get there at the range, and that's really only at 4,500 feet. A lot of where we hunt is between 6,000 and 9,000 feet. Your bullet trajectory can change. A lot of it has to do with temperature as well. I shoot here in the summertime where it's 70, 80 degrees. Out there we're hunting, it's only 30. Things kind of even out a little bit, and I haven't had a problem with my zeros being off, but I have had guys where their zeros were off by 4 to 6 inches. That's enough at 200 yards. That's more than enough to miss a deer. You're not going to be going to the field and get your animals, and it's really heartbreaking to see these guys like, oh, my gun's good. I shot it before I came here, or I shot it somewhere after I got here. I'll tell you this, you take them out in the field, and all of a sudden they're missing animals at 250, 300 yards. Like, dude, that's almost a gimme shot. If you're on a steady rest, that's a gimme shot. Should be, anyways. And they're not doing it. Now, travel can bump your scope. People don't realize you're on the airlines. You're supposed to flop around in the truck bed, on the back seat even. Things get changed out. Things happen on these scopes, even the expensive ones. Check your zero when you get to your hunt area. Do it. It might cost you, or might save you an animal. And another big one is number 4 is horses. If you're going on a horseback hunt, if you even have an inkling that you're going to be riding a horse out there, if the outfitter uses horses, get some training on horseback riding. Go to a local stable. See if they'll let you ride for a little bit, if they've got a little bit of instruction that they can give you. Last year I had a cow elk hunter come out. His brother ended up shooting an elk. We had to go in the next day with horses to pack it out. And we had walked in because there were still elk in the area, tried getting him on one. Didn't work out. The wrangler brought the horses in the afternoon, pack out the animal. He didn't want to walk out. He had a big heavy pack. It was probably 20 or 30 pounds. He wasn't in the greatest shape, so we're like, all right, we put him on my horse. He got about halfway out, and it wasn't a brushy area. It was actually pretty open, but the horse misstepped. There was a lot of rocks. He ended up falling off the horse and got pretty badly injured. He spent 4 days in the hospital. He had a big hematoma on his back, about this big. He had blood under his skin wrapping around all the way to his belly button. Thank God he had a pack on, because if he didn't, it could have ended up a lot worse. At least one of his ribs were broken. Some of the vertebrae and the wings on the vertebrae got fractured and had little bone chips that came off of them. This year I had a couple guys that had lived in Idaho prior. They wanted to do a horseback hunt. They live in California now. They came out. Neither one had ridden a horse in 20 years, maybe longer. We went up in the mountains. We were getting up some real steep, nasty stuff. Still open. So at least we didn't have to deal with trees. But the one guy had his stirrup fall off. And we're coming down the hill. And he's like, hey, my stirrup's gone. I was like, well, where did you lose it? He said, well, it was just on my foot. Like, it came off. It was still on my foot. And now it's gone. So I had to go back up, try to find it. Meanwhile, both these guys are panicking because we're in real steep country. So I ended up having to leave the stirrup. Never did find it. And try to get them out. And the guy had to ride out probably nearly 2 miles with one stirrup missing. And not really happy about that. So I need to say we didn't take horses again after that. There was some issues with that particular guy. As later he wanted horses, but so if you can't ride, I'm not going to put you on an animal that you could potentially injure because you're mishandling it, or injure yourself, and that's a call that a guide has to make. I didn't tell him no, but I definitely discouraged it. So, get some training on it, like anything else. If you're using, if you got a new scope on your rifle, you got a new rifle, take it out to the range. Do your due diligence and practice animals, weapons, bow and arrow. And then number 5, get in shape. You hear it preached all the time. Get in shape if you're going on these western hunts, especially public land hunts where you can't cruise around all the time in a 4x4 or a side-by-side. Where we hunt at down in southern Idaho, we can cover a fair amount of ground on a side-by-side or even in a vehicle. But there are some areas that you just have to get off your butt and you have to hike to it. Even in Utah on the ranch, there's some times where we had to hike miles to get to the deer. The first hunt, the guy I was talking about earlier that kept missing, normally we can cover that ground on an ATV, and we do. The problem was the snow had come in a week prior, pushed all the animals down to really low levels where there was no road access. So we had to hike in from a regular road a mile, mile and a half, sometimes farther, trying to get on these animals. We'd end up walking 5-6 miles a day. And that's just on a ranch. When we're up in the mountains, it's 8 miles. And we're not talking about flat miles. We're talking about steep up and down. One guy, we were archery hunting for elk in September. We ended up doing 8 miles, a little over. And we had a 1,370-foot elevation climb per his little step app on his phone. That's 137 flights of stairs in 8 miles. And most of that was actually in about 2 miles. The walking was fairly flat. We didn't gain a whole lot of elevation there. When we got back into our hunt area, we started climbing, we gained elevation really, really fast. And of course we had to come back down. And sometimes that's just as bad, if not worse, than the climb up. And you guys ever hunted in the mountains, you know that. And you're carrying packs. Here's one I'm going to throw in. We'll say number 6, but it's not on my list. But limit the amount of stuff you put in your pack if you're with an outfitter. So one thing, if you're packing and doing a backcountry camp, you've got to take a lot of gear. I get that. You're with an outfitter, you're coming out every day. You go back to camp, you go back to lodge, whatever. Limit what you have in your pack. You're not going into combat. You're not camping out in the backcountry for 5 days. You don't need a ton of fire starter. You don't need to have 10 MREs in your pack. It's an exaggeration, but some guys pack an overabundance of food and water. Some people need a lot of water, I get it. But limit how much you take. There's no reason to be carrying a pack that weighs more than 10 pounds on these backcountry outfitted hunts. You're coming back. Have enough to survive for the day, maybe 2. If you're around water sources, throw in one of those little filters, filter out 100,000 gallons or whatever. They're $20-$30 at Sportsman and some of the other places. Throw in a little emergency tent if you're thinking you might be stranded out there. It does happen. Some nice fire starter. I started getting a pyro putty. $9-10 for a little can. It weighs about 5 ounces. You can make multiple fires out of that. Get that in a Zippo lighter, you're set. I can't tell you how many clients I had that we started fires up on the mountain because we were freezing cold. One day we even cooked steaks on the fire. no grate. Just threw the steaks right down on the coals. Actually, that was my birthday dinner. It turned out awesome. Call it caveman style steaks. Check out Kent Rollins on that. He's got a really good channel on the Chuck Wagon cooking. So I hope this helps you guys out. And good luck on your future hunts. Hopefully I'll see you out there in Idaho. Happy hunting.